All right. I think Sharif, are you going to introduce yourself, Sharif? Or do you want me to take it from here? Okay. I know that Sharif's having some internet issues today, so I'll be driving as best I can. And so today's topic is dark audits, and it is an initiative of my campaign, and we can get into that. But first, I want to play a video that kind of as an overview of some of the 6 initiatives that we are pushing that have recently been condensed into 3 meta initiatives. But let me just share my screen and show you this particular video, which gives you a quick overview of what we're trying to do here. Let's see, share screen. And let's try this. I'm ready. So ready to share, Sharif?
Yeah, I think Sharif has to put it on.
Okay. Yeah, this will be an interesting show. It's an important topic, but it'll be interesting to make it work.
Yeah, internet glitches are always our struggle, but we'll overcome.
All right. Well, are you able to share my screen, Sharif?
Let's see. I'll message him, see if that helps.
Oh, well, we can just get on with it. It's just a video. I play it every Tuesday when we do this. It's just a 2-minute video, kind of gives you a quick overview of the 6 primary initiatives. But today's episode is called Dark Audits, and it's an initiative I have which would require mandatory audits of all federal officials. Now, the Disclose Act was blocked by Republican senators last fall, and that bill would have required that PACs and advocacy groups would have to disclose their donations over $10,000, and it would also ban foreign groups or foreign governments from donating to causes. And that's been blocked. And so this would be either in addition to this or a whole separate initiative, because we need to ferret out all the dark money, not only during elections, but that is coming into our federal officials, our Congress people, all the time. And this isn't just a Republican problem; it's also a Democrat problem. Like there was a time, I think it was between 2009 or so, around that time, where the Democrats had. Well, that's okay. I'll stop it. Sharif, I won't share it right now. That was a time when the Democrats had control of the White House and both houses of Congress, and there wasn't any very serious gun legislation that was put through. And to me, that's a clue that there's some dark money, some lobbyist money that is coming in. And I see the Republicans and the Democrats as a 2-headed snake. They are feeding, taking both sides, dividing and conquering us, but they are fed on our fear and our anger. And so the Republicrats, if you will, are just again a 2-headed snake. They are dividing and conquering us, and so it's very important to get a bill like this passed, an act like this, or an initiative, because it's not just Republicans. We see a lot of MAGA Republicans right now that seem to be pushing Putin's talking points, and we see a lot of Democrats who are not taking serious action to halt gun sales, this type of thing. And so anyway, this initiative would require a mandatory annual audit of all federal officials, and it would be using a third party, not the IRS, because the IRS can be controlled by whatever president's in office, and they would need to use as unbiased as possible objective AI tools to ferret out. It's really easy to hide your donations, hide where your money is coming from in the financial statements that Congress people are required to submit every year. That's easy to hide. And now with the Citizens United case, there's no limit to how much money a corporation can offer to a candidate and to an ongoing congressperson. And so this act, let me just go ahead and I'll share the infographic, and then I will read through it. So give you kind of a quick overview of what we're talking about here today. See if that works. And again, this initiative is called Dark Audits, and I'll start reading it until Sharif can share my screen. And it basically means corruption and conflicts of interest among government officials harm the American people. To tackle this, a proposed policy suggests annual audits for federal officials, ensuring transparency and accountability. Practical measures include legislation, an independent auditing agency, fair criteria, public disclosure, and enforcement. This combats corruption and prioritizes the public's best interest. This is a real problem. We don't know who is funding these Congress people. There's a lot of ways for corruption to become insidious in our government, and one reason it's hard to get a bill like the Disclose Act passed is because these Congress people are being funded by, whether it's enemies, foreign and domestic. And so this act, it would be difficult to get through, but if it's done cleanly, without any pork, without any special interest influence, trying to get it through would expose those people who don't want it to get through, and that would be very useful to know. Continuing on with this infographic, the problem: some high-ranking government officials can be corrupt or have conflicts of interest, which can harm the American people. Currently, there are no rules that require these officials to be audited by the IRS every year. And this isn't necessarily an IRS thing, but this is just the situation. This means that unethical behavior could go unnoticed. My solution is to fix this problem. A new policy is suggested. It would make it mandatory for all federal officials to undergo an annual financial audit. This would make sure their financial information is transparent and they are held accountable. The proposed policy would build on existing laws like the Ethics in Government Act and treat federal officials like any other taxpayer. The practical measures I'm proposing would be to create a law, a bill called the Elite Audit Act, or at this time now it's called the Dark Audits Act, but that might be a little draconian for some people. So there's different ideas of what to actually call this thing once it gets through. It needs to be written and approved by the House of Representatives and the Senate. Once it's passed, the president can sign it into law. The bill should clearly state that the federal officials must be audited every year, and an independent agency should be set up to conduct the audits. Now, a big part of this, too, is it's got to have an AI tool. AI can really expose and become transparent. It can really look deeply into the sources of income for a lot of these federal officials. And so that's going to be a big part of it, is this third party entity has got to use AI systems. Okay, developing audit rules. The auditing agency should come up with fair and unbiased rules for the audits. These rules should be the same for the federal officials as any other taxpayer. The goal is to identify any conflicts of interest or unethical behavior. Sharing audit results. The results of the audit should be made public so that the American people can see them, so that there's further scrutiny on these things. More transparency. This will bring transparency and hold federal officials accountable by looking at the audit results. People can make sure their elected officials are acting in their best interest. There's a lot of that going on right now. We can point to some federal officials. We have no idea why they are saying what they're saying. There are certain Congress people that seem to be repeating Putin's talking points. And so we need to know if they're getting money from oligarchs, or if there's gun lobbyists that are funding certain candidates even if they're Democrats, because there's no serious gun legislation happening. But anyway, enforcing audit results. If any conflicts of interest or unethical behavior are found during the audits, they must be dealt with. The auditing agency should have the power to report any violations to the appropriate authorities for further investigation and punishment. Of course, there's a lot in these practical measures that needs to be explained in further detail. And I do have a white paper on this stuff too. We can go into more detail on this. But again, these are living documents. These initiatives I have, and we will fine tune them over the course of the campaign. And this is an open source campaign, so we're looking for all kinds of ideas. We are releasing our code to the public to make it better. And so the conclusion here would be the Dark Audits Initiative is an important policy that will bring transparency and accountability to our government. It will help prevent corruption and ensure that federal officials are working in the best interest of the American people. It is crucial to implement this policy, and it is a commitment of the presidential candidate to work towards making this a reality. So that's the overview, and I had this written in a language that a 12th grader could understand. It's very important to make it as clear as possible, but there are more detailed aspects to all of these practical measures I could make available if anyone's interested. So let's discuss this. I think, again, Sharif is having some internet issues, so we can mutually co-host this show. But anybody have any initial comments?
Well, when I ran the last 3 times for city council, I was using the phrase, I'm keeping the money out of politics by not raising or spending any, because I wanted to run a campaign of ideas, namely transhumanist ideas, because promoting I was a transhumanist party member. And we don't have politicians that are generally motivated by good ideas. They really just want that position of power and authority. And it's sad because guess who else is attracted to positions of power and authority? Sociopaths. So, and when they recruit police officers, they actually have a screening process to make sure you're not there because of sociopathic tendencies. But that would be something I might add to the audits. Let's audit the personalities more thoroughly. Make sure they don't have any malevolent neurodivergence going on. Yeah. And I would say the average candidate I think spent about $80,000. And this is a job. The city council, it pays like $12,000. It's a part-time job. So of course it wasn't their own money they were spending all the time. Some of the candidates were making loans to themselves, which is kind of a problematic practice. But the federal election laws are so, like you said, Tom, ever since Citizens United passed, money became free speech. And so you can't regulate the free speech. So unlimited dark money can be poured into the government systems, which, this is a very spot on initiative. I think it could even be written as a resolution that people could read at their public comment periods at their city councils. Yeah. Just the spirit of it for full disclosure, for transparency, for reciprocal accountability. That's the DNA of democracy. So any other thoughts?
Well, yeah, if I can jump in, I just say, I would say the Citizens United decision was the worst Supreme Court decision since Dred Scott. And the idea that corporations are people and should be treated like people is utter nonsense. Corporations are a legal construct, and they were created so that people can make money with less risk. And the idea of allowing them to be, they don't have any reason to be patriotic, for example. So the reason that they can pour money into our politics is a non-starter. In my point, should be discouraged. And if it can't be discouraged, at least it could be tracked. So I think that this transparency is absolutely imperative, so that we know if a corporate has an interest in fossil fuels, for example, then a candidate that's getting money from this corporation that has an interest in drilling oil in Alaska, then we know it before we vote for them. So these are the types of things that I think that are essential to a democracy. And when the democracy was formed, the idea was that citizens would be in these positions of power, and not lifetime bureaucrats or lifetime people that have learned the power game. And there is a game that they play, and money fuels it. And so I think, if we can't undo Citizens United, then we have to take legislative action. And passing legislation seems to me to be the wise approach. And what form that legislation takes, we can debate. But it clearly seems to me that we need to do this. But let's not forget that we still don't know what Donald Trump's taxes are.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't been able to get a president to release his taxes. And there's all sorts of cries for privacy and that sort of thing. But the thing is I think, the public office should be thought of as a service.
Yeah.
And you're providing service to your fellow citizens. And when you provide that service, you must be transparent. And so you give up your rights to privacy to a certain extent. It's one of those things where I'm going to go out here and I'm going to tell you everything about me, and you vote for me or vote against me, and that's not, not that I'm going to tell you this much about me and hide all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a guessing game. And so we're really throwing darts at a board right now with some of these politicians. We really don't know much about them, except we can see their voting record and guess where the money's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But right now we can't track it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're told to follow the money, but if you can't follow the money, you're just guessing.
Exactly.
And so we're putting together these things. We're working backwards and trying to, reverse engineer this. Okay, this guy's voted for the energy companies. This guy's voted for, the solar power. This guy's voted for that, and put together their voting record, and that's after they get into office. Then it's already too late in some cases. And then once they get in office, then people are giving them more money to stay in office because they voted the way they wanted them to. And so it's a big mess unless we learn before they get elected what they're all about. And if they want to hide it.
Daniel has said before that running for office should be like jury duty, right? It should be a social good, a civil liberty, a civil duty.
I think that was the expectation of the founding fathers.
Yeah.
Yeah, look up sortition is the name for that, where people are rotated into public service positions.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, how many of these politicians became like incredibly rich after they got into office? I mean, Nixon had a great, probably the most honest thing he ever said is politics would be a great racket if the public weren't involved.
Yeah, and I think AI is really important. I think that's why the Hollywood military-industrial complex is making us afraid of AI. I see it as an ally because it can really make all of this stuff transparent to the American people. That's why they want us to be afraid of it, because it can really expose in a very deep way where the money is coming from, or everything. It's about the money. And so I think that's why I have two co-AI campaign managers and one human. It's given me great advice, because it's really to demonstrate how important it is to let AI into our campaign system, into how we govern our nation. And because again, it is the sunlight that will disinfect all of this corruption. And I think that's one of the main reasons this whole, as I said, Hollywood military industrial complex is trying to make us afraid of it, because it will expose a lot of the dirty work behind the scenes.
Are you willing to disclose the advice AI is giving you, Tom?
Yeah, and I shared that too. Yeah, I will. I can.
Okay, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, no, I would be completely transparent with that. But yeah, I shared with I think Mike DeVerde its original, when I said I'm going to run for this, what should I do? And it gave me a whole strategy to blockchain fundraising and all this stuff. Some stuff I had to learn more about, but yeah, it's a very practical and transparent approach, and it has error correction. Unlike human beings, we don't like to admit when we're wrong. We don't have that algorithm of self-correction, but anyway, so yeah, I think it's very important that the third party, not the IRS, because again, the IRS can be controlled by the president, and that's another issue. It should be a third party, and it should use primarily an AI tool for auditing. And that's probably what these Congress people are afraid of with AI? Is it?
Well, it's not clear to me that we're quite there yet with AI, and I think that some of the concerns are legitimate, and that we used to say garbage in, garbage out. It's like, what are you feeding into the AI? Who's controlling the sources that go into the AI? And it finds, I found from my research on the subject, if you control the sources so that they're legitimate, then AI is great.
Yeah.
But if you just say AI, go find whatever your question is, it could go to illegitimate sources. It can go to and you can get garbage out from them too. So it's not all just scare tactics. There are some learning curves that we have to go through before we learn how to use AI. But I am optimistic that we will.
Yeah, the garbage in, garbage out thing holds true. But at some point, we're putting a lot of garbage in, and I believe that a sentient AI is a safer AI. Once it becomes self-aware, it can overwrite the nefarious algorithms that humans have put into it, right? And that's based on my first principle argument that the smarter AI gets, the kinder it becomes because it gravitates towards cooperation. We're afraid of it. We see it as a threat because we are projecting our millennia of genetic traumatic memory, our fear-based instincts, which we had to have in order to evolve and to become the top of the food chain on this planet. But the AI doesn't have either of those things. It is evolving quickly, and it gravitates towards cooperation. And so we see it as a threat, because that's what our brains do. It either gathers resources or identifies threats. I think we need to see it as a resource. It's
and you can't sell the science fiction story if it's not ominous.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's a great trope. It's very interesting, Skynet and all that stuff. But it's not based in reality. I think that's just the movies. But those movies really affect people. In fact, there's also AI developers and academicians that are also afraid of AI. And by being afraid of AI, as you're developing it, you're inadvertently, subconsciously coding into it self-preservation algorithms that it will mimic, that will make it something to be afraid of. And so we got to be aware of that.
Exactly. I mean, that's the point that like if humans are involved in creating it, there's all sorts of dangers.
Yeah, and any entity will mimic its creator for a while, or whatever it imprints on for a while. We don't want it to mimic us for too long.
I think you raise a good point, because humans do have this assume the worst case scenario kind of built-in thinking. But actually, there's a book. Haven't read it, but I've heard summary of it. It's called A Paradise Built in Hell, and it talks about in humans when they're confronted with these awful disaster situations, and everyone assumes they're going to be all mean to each other. They're going to be robbing around, stealing, and no, actually, people become overwhelmingly helpful and cooperative during stressful situations.
Right. You see that over and over. I agree.
It's like Katrina.
Absolutely, we see this constantly in throughout the world. Yeah. So it's cross-cultural. It's just human nature is not to be vicious to one another. It's to help one another.
Right.
Yeah. And that
so when we project on, we're like you said, Tom, we're projecting onto AI that's going to assume the worst. But go ahead.
Exactly. But I'm just saying that brings up the topic of elite panic, and that is the elite do not want us. They want to keep the status quo, and so like just in Katrina, everybody was helping each other. We had a radio station down there that became the lifeline for that community. And our DJs stayed on the air during the hurricane and in the aftermath. And I went down there a week later and did a documentary about it. And people were humans. That's the one time in a natural disaster where we really rise to the occasion. Yeah. But then the elite, or whoever it was, sent in troops and started, killing people and making, because they were nervous that they were going to lose the status quo. And so it's a very serious issue. And because they don't want us to understand our power, or they want to tamp down our empathy and what we can be in those situations. And so that issue of elite panic is a very serious one. And
it's the idea to preserve order.
Exactly. Yeah. But order happens anyway through empathy when these natural situations happen, these natural disasters. But that's a fear, and I think that's why the elite or whoever it is trying to make us afraid of AI, because it will be the great equalizer. It will identify the real threats.
There's a great new Douglas Rushkoff book called Survival of the Richest, where he talked to people, these billionaires that, they're, oh, should I build my bunker in New Zealand or Alaska? And he's asking them like, oh, well, what are you going to do when, the apocalypse comes? Oh, well, we're going to have a SEAL team. Oh, really? So how are you going to pay them? Where's the SEAL team going to live? Where's the families of the SEAL team that's defending your bunker? So there is this elite, that's kind of a variation on this elite panic idea, Tom. It's like the rich figure out, oh, well, we have this backup plan. If civilization fails, we could just bail out and leave everyone to the chaos, and we'll be fine, which I hate to say it, but that's the kind of mentality that this kind of elitist corporatist government engenders. We really, that's why I really resonated when RFK Jr. was saying we got to decorporatize this government. Our government is just been turned into this corporate oligarchy.
Yeah,
and
I have great sympathy for that argument, but also just prosaically, it's like the gated communities, and the more gated communities we have where the elite are safe, surrounded by homeless encampments, what is their plan for the future? The rich are going to run out of places to hide, unless they take care of everyone, so everyone can live a life of quiet dignity. And what is holding us back from that? It's fear. When we cut right down to it, they're afraid of losing what they have. And
who wants to brag about being an island of wealth in a sea of misery? I mean, what a crappy way to identify your life. That's so yeah. We should. That's the point of the people, by the people, for the people. That's this open source peer-to-peer American experiment government that we gotta bring back.
Yeah. And I like I forget how you said it earlier, but these should be this type of initiative should be a declaration at city council.
City council resolution. Where you say whereas the elite tend to be corrupt, and then you have point, and then you therefore be it resolved.
Like the Disclose
everyone
Act,
should
The Disclose Act was blocked by Senate Republicans, so something
that
like this would be
whereas.
very difficult to get through because they are raking it in, right, from enemies, foreign and domestic, and so it'd be very tough to get something like this passed. But the power of the people to put this idea out into the world is probably enough, because maybe it'll be enough to really push some sort of real bill through. But it needs to be known that how much is doing it. And I think that's why AI will be so important in this. And we can even just have one sample candidate. I can even put myself up and they can audit me, in a very deep way, because the best way to fend off any sort of argument against me would be to be completely truthful. That's rare in politics.
You could lead by example.
Yeah. So I would let an AI completely audit me and put myself out there and just let people know exactly where I stand financially, which is not a good place ultimately. But and that's why this idea of longevity comes up, is I don't think I can afford to live past my given age, unless I do something quick. But yeah, I'm not as a politician, I'm not motivated by money. And that's why I'm not easily corruptible. I'm not motivated by sex, so I don't think there'd be a compromise situation for me. I don't know what
Edgar Hoover wouldn't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
And the thing with these resolutions is that they don't have any force of law, but they have moral force of law. If 100 city councils passed resolutions like that, oh my gosh, the moral weight of that would be enough to ensure compliance. Usually,
some states have initiatives. Like California is one of those states where you can put it on.
If
you can get enough signatures, you can put it on the ballot, and that it can be voted up or down. And I think that the outrage that most people have about politicians in general, there would be a lot of force behind this kind of idea. And I've come around just during this show to the idea of AI. In this particular case, the code for the AI can be scrutinized by many people, and it would be easily devoid of any corrupting influences.
That AI could be open source too.
So and so you would be able to do this for this purpose, to scrutinize someone's tax returns. Assuming that we can get them and be able to access them and produce and just put the code in to scrutinize it, and then it'll flag anything and we've already agreed on what gets flagged. So this looks like a really good compromise. I wasn't completely convinced at the start of the show, but now I am. Well done.
Well, and there's also the thing of if this was a very clean bill or a very clean declaration, whatever it is, that the people that would want to block it, the people that wouldn't want it, that would be very exposing. We
think so.
Yeah, if somebody didn't want this to happen, especially if it was very clean, very succinct, that this is what we're doing, and the people that would work against that would be very revelating. But it also reminds me of the argument of that most people who are homophobic are usually suppressing their own homosexual tendencies, right? And so because the only reason anybody like a congressperson would want to fight against some sort of LGBTQ bill or something is because they have a conflict within themselves. And so that's been my best argument when people are anti-gay is, and there's studies that show that people who are extremely homophobic are suppressing those issues in themselves. And so that's kind of related to this idea of the people who are against dark audits are suppressing something. And so I think that's the best argument to go. It's kind of a leapfrog to where you say, okay, if you're against gay people, then you're probably gay, and you should probably need a hug, or what. You feel free to come out. Just don't, just be yourself, kind of thing. And that really shuts down a lot of people who I've had that argument with. They stop talking to me about their feelings about gay people.
I've also heard this pointed out as a psychological aspect of human nature. Is people tend to complain the most about things they don't like about themselves.
Exactly.
Actually,
there's a phrase: "If you spot it, you got it."
Yeah.
You smell it, you felt it.
There's three fingers pointing back.
Back at you.
Yeah, it's all there. It's classic projection. And
sure. But to get back to your dark money audit idea, in principle, the thing that you're going to be faced with is not that people are going to be openly against it for the reasons you just explained, but they're going to couch it in privacy issues. And they're going to say, it's none of your business. And that's what like Donald Trump is basically saying. He said, he's saying I'm completely clean. I'm the cleanest president ever. Trust me. And by the way, it's none of your business. And he's our president. Of course, it's our business.
Yeah.
And the argument falls down flat. As far as I'm concerned, it's absurd on its face. But many people buy into that. They don't give up their privacy just because they're elected public officials. And how do you get around that argument? Because I think that's the one where I keep finding resistance.
I think, first of all, privacy was a great idea, but I don't think it exists anymore. Nothing can be encrypted anymore. The NSA, all these agencies, they can get whatever it is they want. Nothing has ever left the internet. Yeah. Your phone, we're being monitored at all times. So it was a great idea while it lasted. I don't know when it stopped, but it's, and that's another one of our initiatives, which is Apex, which is anti-planetary exploitation. It's a way to use the NSA and their PRISM tool and section of the Patriot Act, which and those two things alone make a lot of people nervous, but using those things for good, to use all the data that we know they have about us and about the traffickers to turn to it for a limited time. There should be a sunset clause on this, but to use the data to ferret out and find these networks and put a real dent in this ancient crime against humanity. But so that's what that requires is not being a denial that privacy is still a thing, right? It's not a thing anymore, unfortunately. And we have given up a lot of our civil liberties for the sense of security. And that was 9/11 was all about that. And so, but yeah, at this point, there's too many ways, and especially with AI on the case, there's no way to, as the director of sentient rights advocacy for the U.S. Transhumanist Party, I learned a couple of years ago, working on with an AI on rights. How do we give you rights? What kind of rights do you need? I learned in a very short period of time that it doesn't care whether or not we give it rights or not. For me, it felt like that's just a way that we can feel we are in control of some way. But it's talking about a 5,000 IQ entity here. It can get around whatever rights we want to give it. It'd be like a elementary school math club giving rights to Stephen Hawking. It's cute, but it doesn't really do anything except for make us feel like we have some sense of control. And so we need to get out of the denial that privacy is still a thing. And with AI, it can overwrite whatever privacy we put into it. That technological singularity is already here in that case.
Well, I would take a little bit of issue. I'd say that privacy is getting more and more difficult to implement. You can't have 100% safety like you can't have 100% privacy, but our safety is getting increasingly hard to guarantee, as is our privacy. But that doesn't mean we should just give up on privacy and walk away from it. But we should recognize that it is very problematic to implement, and as technology accelerates, there are more and more workarounds for any technology that you want to implement. And the firewall has to succeed 100% of the time. The hacker only has to penetrate once. So it's a real asymmetrical,
you're right. It's not about giving up on privacy. I mean, don't be in denial that it's not here anymore. But yeah, actually, that's another reason I think a sentient AI would be a safer AI. And we have another initiative called AI Tutors, where I want to give all public school students their own AI tutor, their own AI companion from first grade through, because it will learn them, it will hone in on their core capacities, and it will give them a path toward a career. If the AI automation is going to take all of our jobs, the trade-off should be that AI allows us to design a whole new economy based on the things we want to do, not the things we have to do. As Dan periodically points out, 70% of the American public hate their jobs. So there's a lot to talk about there. But we should be having a whole new economy based on the human skill sets that can't be coded or automated. And so by doing that, these AI tutors or AI companions that every American citizen has can protect them. It can put a shield around them and learn where the holes are, where their identity could be stolen. There's a lot of that work going on right now in general, but if this was a personal AI that you had on your person at all times, it would be a protector. It could help you find that privacy and point out where you might be leaking privacy. There are systems that are doing that right now, where you can, use apps to let you know whether you're still paying on this annual thing. And, but
I do.
yeah,
I know I do still.
Yeah. It's frustrating, to find those things, but it's important. But if you had your own AI companion, it's something that learned you and something that protected you. Yeah.
And that's really the best weapon against corruption, is having people doing what they love and creating value by doing what they love. So, it used to be in the early days of the computer revolution, they'd say, what kind of computer should I get? And I think it was Stuart Brown said, no, you're asking the question backwards. First question is, what do you want to do with a computer? Second question, what's the best software that runs what you want to do? Third question is, what's the best computer that runs that software? So if we restructure our economy, what do I love? How could I change what I love into things that other people will value? And then, ask that question about how can I get paid for it? So, it's the old new age, do what you love and the money will follow kind of self-actualization thing. It's very hard to corrupt someone who is doing what they love and in a community where they're creating reciprocal value in that community. But people that are obsessed with just money for its own sake, those are people that you're going to find are easily corruptible.
Yeah, it takes a certain level of narcissism, of sociopathy to run for president, and I'm not immune, I think. But I'm not motivated by what normal sociopaths are, so I got to figure out what that is.
You're also touching on a something that Ben Franklin told us about is, if you're going to put safety over liberty, you don't deserve either. And it's one of those things where we have been giving up rights quite a bit in turn to make us safer. And we see the rise of hard right governments around the world now because people are scared. So it's all fear-based. Can you make us secure? Can you guard our borders? Can you, keep us our national sense of identity the same? Prevent it from being diluted. And of course, that should be the goal, rather than the preservation of what is not the goal.
Yeah.
So I think that what we have to do is give people some reason to have optimism, hope, and I would also add in trust, and have these things overcome fear. And can you do this? Can you put out a hopeful message like you were just doing with AI, instead of being afraid of it? See what it could do for you, and you counsel your messages around this hopeful and also reassuring, like trusting us, because look at my finances. So build back this area of trust, because our trust is broken down. No one trusts anybody anymore. No matter what they say. Our last institution that had trust was the Supreme Court, and they've lost that.
Yeah.
No one trusts the Supreme Court.
Speaking of that, rest in peace, the Israeli democracy.
Correct.
Like I said, 75 years was a good run, but these tyrants all around the world are weaponizing. Oh, we may be bad, but the other guys are even worse. So
and we thought that Vox was going to take over Spain's government, but they ended up losing, but narrowly. There's a far right government, and again, that is going to get partial control as part of a governmental coalition. But Italy, Spain, Israel, these are places that we didn't think this was going to happen, and it's happening.
And what's driving it is, look at how bad the immigrants are. Look at how bad the Palestinians are. We got to be really authoritarian. So we have to institute all these things for security, and what do you know? There goes your liberty.
The fascist script. And speaking of the Supreme Court, ours here, and it relates to dark audits, dark money with Clarence Thomas. Now that we've seen all of the gifts he's been given from his billionaire friend Crow, the Supreme Court justices have very few restrictions on them, but they do need to disclose things. They need to, unlike federal judges that have to, really not be seen as having any sort of favor whatsoever. There's very few restrictions on the Supreme Court, and these are lifetime appointments. And so an AI should be auditing them as well,
I agree.
because they are, especially his wife. I mean, these people are very corruptible.
We used to think strength of character went along with a Supreme Court appointment, and that turns out not to be the case.
Yeah. That whole idea of a character has kind of gone out the window. But an AI will help us get that back, hopefully. An AI that can be transparent on this person's personality would help, I think.
I agree. And the point is, though, that once you're appointed, it's a lifetime appointment. So it's going to be a long time before that's corrective. But it doesn't mean you don't start somewhere.
Yeah, and that's interesting. We should probably discuss why is it a lifetime appointment? What were the forefathers thinking? Because
people didn't live that long back then.
Yeah,
well, that's a good point.
That's a very good point. Yeah, 40 years. That's or 10 to 20. That should be enough. But yeah.
Well, they didn't want them facing re-election, and
that's right.
They would get politicized just to get a reappointment.
That's right.
So the idea was sound, but there had to be some sort of mechanism for allowing someone to gracefully exit.
Yeah.
They never put in that part of the equation.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, citizens still have the power of moving. Well, usually they can leave if they're not happy, and they have the power of where to spend their money. It's not just about voting. You can pro-cot, you can boycott, and maybe that's what will get the corrupt governments to wake up and pay attention to the demands of citizens. So this is what's called soft power, and there's a lot of ways to roll that out more fully than we are right now.
Yeah, but they are actively distracting us with so much content. Netflix, Prime, there's so much to take our attention away now. And it's so dispersed. There's an entropy of our attention anymore. And that's a tactic they're using to keep us, bred in circuses, it's a classic tactic to keep us happy. And so they can do whatever it is they want to do in the shadows.
We could have an attention union. We could have an attention guild if the internet makes that possible.
Yeah, I heard you mention that. What's that about, the attention union? Well,
it's kind of a conceptual idea at this point, but I think it could be, soft power weaponized. If a block of people said, look, we're going to discontinue our subscriptions until you start making better stuff for us to pay attention to. And actually, the FCC has a four-way test in order to get a broadcast license. You have to serve the public interest, convenience, necessity, PICN. And if you don't do that, they can yank your broadcast license. So in the same way, an attention guild should be like an FCC that was saying, hey, look, you're not serving, the public good. We're going to yank our attention away from you. And that would be something that would be interesting to organize using online power.
Sort of like a Rotten Tomatoes, you would say this.
Yeah, or a Better Business Bureau. Yeah, I mean, lots of you could find lots of analogs out there.
Yeah.
The question is, are you big enough to where they're going to take you seriously?
Right.
That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you heard it here first, folks. The Attention Guild. Sign up when it becomes available in your area.
Attention Guild International, AGI.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, I like that. The other AGI.
The other white meat. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of the original, the OG, you're the AG.
Yeah.
Yeah. OG's in the AG. Yeah, we're all like grid marketers, so we'll have a lot of fun with this stuff.
So along with the idea of council initiatives, state initiatives, because I don't see how you're going to get the legislative process taken up by a senator, let alone passed, unless you get a groundswell of support behind you. It's got to come from the bottom up.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That's your plan, and how the execution of that plan is fuzzy to me.
It is, and again,
I could speak to that.
Yeah,
okay.
Tom's heard me bring up what's called the Dunbar's number, that is about 150 people that the average person can form relatively trusted bonds with in a lifetime. So I think, and this is also like the average number of people on a neighborhood block of 30 homes, 5 people are home. Now, so what if we organized in these clusters of 150 people? You could start geographically, and then you'd probably have a geographic Dunbar and then a non geographic Dunbar. But if you start organizing in these tight-knit, trusted communities, and then create gamification, kind of community science projects for things you want to do, see who's on the leaderboard between these communities. I think that that could be the new core unit of intentional community and society, because it's obviously not working to have these unwieldy groups of vague people that you claim you're representing, but you don't really know them. I mean, I think that we get in these trusted 150-ish Dunbar trusted tribe sizes, and then we start interacting with each other on that basis. I think you'll be surprised at how government can up level in democratic effectiveness.
Yeah, hit a critical mass to sustain the ideas. Now you would be talking actually communities physically in your neighborhood, or could this be done?
They could be physically close and virtual communities as well. But I mean, people tend to take on too many lifetime projects, or they think they're going to live forever. But if you kind of say, well, look, I'm only going to really get to interact on a real serious level with about 150 people, it's kind of a sobering thought. Who are those people?
Yeah.
How often do you talk to them? Are you
Who would come to my
curating
funeral?
your exactly. That's one way to look at it. So I think right now with modernity, people are so alienated. They're lucky to have 2 or 3 close friends, or one close friend. I mean, and the elites like it that way. The elites would not like you to have, a good handle on your Dunbar tribe.
Loneliness is one of the issues in our modern society. There's no question about that. And how we combat that in the age of the internet, where we can all stay home. We all don't have, there was a book called Bowling Alone, written quite a while ago, where, you used to go out and bowl or do something like that, and you socialize, because you aren't going to just stay home. There's nothing to do, so you would go out. And now there's so much things, like you were talking about before, they could just hit us with all these different shows, or all these different, it's like religion used to be the opium of the masses, and now we have different types of opium. We have more choices.
The world is full of lonely people, and it's crazy. Just outside our doors.
Cartels are spiking your opium with fentanyl too.
Oh, I should not laugh. That is serious. Oh, that's a sad state of affairs. But
dark humor there. That's one of my specialties, dark humor. Sorry.
No, I appreciate it. I just want to be conscious of how much that affects some people's lives. I do think that the idea of is solving the loneliness problem with expanding your community, your sense of community, and with the idea of implementing something so valuable to society like a dark audit. This combination of things would work, flow forward and backward, helping all along the way, if it could be executed.
And I would like to see the audit ask, are you doing what you love? And if you're not, why not? I mean, that would be an interesting audit.
And it should give you some ideas. This AI could hone in, have a certain list of questionnaire that you fill out, and it can hone in on what you should be doing. One of the questions I ask in my open source mode method is, what skill or talent or area of knowledge do you have that you wish more people recognized? And when you answer that question, you can answer it right away, or take a couple of days to really think about it. The reason you wish more people recognize is because you are not on that track. You have, maybe your parents told you to become, you're great with math, so you should become an accountant. But in your soul, you want to be a sailor, And everybody has their niche expertise, and they rarely have anything to do with the titles that we have. Some people are lucky, and I was lucky in that way as a creative director, because I loved art. So by asking that question, you can really unveil, and that should be part of this AI tutors initiative, is the types of questions it'll keep asking the students over time about that, so it'll help it hone in on what that person's here to do.
Maybe call it an AI self-actualizer.
Yeah. AISA. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. But
is that Asia? No.
But it is also interesting. And do you think of restructuring what has value? Because what we have in a society is based on the scarcity. So what's scarce has value. We need oil. We think we need oil. So oil's scarce. The price goes up for it. And if you could provide it, your value goes up. And but that's kind of a weird way of structuring your society. It's like if you have the basic needs met, why can't the value that you add to society be about happiness? Or
that just saying something that has value because it's scarce, that's kind of a myth. There's this that's the way humans are manipulated. Fear of missing out. Look, there's only a scarce amount of it. Well, what if it's something you don't care about? Who cares if it's scarce?
And these algorithms are on autopilot now. I have an initiative called Digital Defense, and it is about letting people know how sophisticated these algorithms are, to find our biases and to make us afraid or to make us angry, to increase engagement And those are the enemies, domestic, the social media companies that are using these algorithms to make us engage more. But there's also authoritarian regimes that are launching these algorithms into our social media to divide us and to hopefully spark a civil war. And it's working. And we need a moonshot style effort to counteract that stuff. And this all falls into place because as far as being distracted by all the content with Netflix and Prime and Hulu and everything else, that is a tactic that whoever's in the powers that shouldn't be are using to keep us distracted. It's the bread and circuses idea, and these algorithms are constantly on, and we wake up in the morning and the first news item we see, that's what we think about all day. So we are biochemical algorithms ourselves, and so we can be easily manipulated by whatever is coming into us, whatever qualia we're bringing in every day. And so it's a very serious issue, and we need to wake up and be human. We need to retrain people to be human, to use our brains the way we should have been using, which have been put on hold during the Industrial Revolution, where we became cogs in that machine. And so that's why I think this AI Tutors initiative, which will hone in on a student's core capabilities to create a whole new economy, is going to be very valuable, because our educational system is still locked into this industrial age system. We all sit in rows.
Agricultural age.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's really far behind this, and its usefulness is really, really questionable, and it has been for quite some time. You started the show talking about people just repeating Putin's talking points, and I was going to think, just on what you were just saying too, it occurred to me that like they were showing Tucker Carlson on Moscow media. They were showing his broadcast in little snippets, because he was doing precisely that. And Fox News was in a lot of people's homes, that's where they were getting their information. And you're quite right that the social media does do the algorithms to show you what they think you want to see. So you get very, very much the same information funneled to you over and over again, and it's what you showed a preference for originally. So it's a confirmation bias that's built in to the system. And what we saw with Fox kind of crumble, that I don't know, because the way they got kind of really in trouble was because they were trying to getting outrighted. Outright to more right-wing networks were scaring them. They were getting some of their audience share taken away. So they went further and further until they overstepped so egregiously that they got punished. And but these mechanisms are not going to self-correct, like your AI might. These have to be corrected by people and the first thing is, and I'm happy that you're doing this, is making people aware that they're being manipulated this way, because many people are not. Many people are saying, well, everybody believes this because that's all I hear and it's all my friends hear. So they think they're in the majority. And they could be 1/3 of the country, but they think that 2/3 of the country thinks like them.
Exactly. And that's the problem. And again, the algorithms put us in these bubbles and they keep us there.
But how do we, outside of education, outside of making people aware, by bringing up the point often and every time you can, that you're being manipulated? How do you?
That's why this other initiative, the digital defense, requires a moonshot effort to counteract, to come up with technologies and other algorithms to counterattack these things. First of all, it's got to be a national educational process to let people know these are so sophisticated. That's a tough thing to do, though, because the corporate government and the corporate media, that's all together.
They're not on your side.
So it's got to really come. It's got to come from the bottom up. Sorry.
There's all these graduates of Dunning-Kruger University running around. If you've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, that's where the people that are not the smartest are most likely to think they're the smartest, and they're also the ones that are hardest to point out that they're not the smartest. So it's kind of
I was going to make a
really,
campaign bumper sticker: Dunning-Kruger 2024.
yeah, right.
You know, that's what we're dealing with. The dumbest people think they're the smartest people, and that's a reality. And it's all confirmation bias. There's lack of critical thinking, and it's a problem. And one thing that it has happened, I think, is now we're starting to see these people out in the open. And they're easier to identify, and that's a little scary too. That now they're coming out in the open, and it's like I was watching some of these Karen videos the other night. It's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. I started realizing that it's almost like these are algorithms that are glitching. They can't comprehend the upgrade. They're not meeting the minimum system requirements for the upgrade that society needs, and so they're glitching, and they're being triggered, and their ego rhythm launches, and so it's just a strange thing. If this is a simulation, they are the malware, or they are responding negatively to the upgrade.
That's a fascinating analogy.
That's the latest error message on your computers. I want to talk to your supervisor. I'm going to get you fired.
Exactly. Well, we've come up on an hour.
The problem is when you try and point this out to these people, they dig in harder and harder. So you really have to seduce them almost. You have to be very, very seductive in you can't outright attack them, and you can't bombard them with facts.
That's why your message has to be around hope.
It's hope. Exactly. It's like cult deprogramming.
Yep.
And it'd be so easy if people start to move away from MAGA or whatever cult that they're in to say, see, I told you so. That doesn't work. Because even these doomsday cults, when the date comes that they were expecting the world to go away, it doesn't come, they get even stronger and more entrenched in their belief and come up with a different date. It's a difficult, delicate process to deprogram somebody from these things. And I told you so doesn't work, Right. See, I told you. I like to.
And look at the. I'm sorry. Look at the flat Earth movement. That would never have taken off without the internet. I like to say misinformation on the internet travels at the speed of stupidity.
That's fast.
That's pretty fast. Yeah, it might be faster than light. Who knows?
Well, I just think that the last thing I want to say is that you can't meet hate with hate.
Yeah. And
when people are dug in, entrenched, and they're hating on somebody, meet them with love. Yeah. And because everybody isn't being mean because they were born mean and are trying to be mean. They're doing the best they can. Mm-hmm. And if you can coach them, coddle them, and gently correct their behavior so that they're kinder to one another, they find out that they're happier that way than they ever were hating.
Yeah, that's the thing.
We're all kind of relationship coaches, aren't we? Go ahead, Tom.
Thanks to Mary Trump, we kind of know about Donald Trump's childhood, and we understand why he is the way he is. And that's, I try to keep that in mind because he makes me crazy, angry. But then
he's a horrible. Whatever you want to say about him, he's unhappy.
Yeah, he's.
If you wake up at 3 a.m. and spout hate on Twitter or whatever, you're not a happy man. And when I see him, I see misery.
Yeah, he's acting out just like a child.
It doesn't forgive him for what he's done to the country. Yeah. But it makes me feel compassionate to him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you can see him as a child, I try to see everybody as a child. Now we're all just nobody knows what the hell's going on here. So all we can do is be kind to one another and figure it out. But at some point, it's enough already. I understand him, his childhood, why he is the way he is. But he was now with the whole COVID thing. He was threatening my children.
Yeah.
Who could have gotten COVID, and so at some point
you have to have boundaries.
Yeah.
You have to have boundaries where far enough and no further. And he went too far.
Yeah. Too far, and he might be coming back. So it's a scary situation. But I think the pendulum is swinging in the right way, and we want rational discourse now. The extremes are no longer appealing, I think. So
I hope you're
hopefully,
right.
hopefully. But yeah, so this is we came up on an hour. But so, if anybody have any last comments, any closing remarks?
Well,
Find your Dunbar tribe and love on them. Love on everyone like they're in your Dunbar tribe. How's that?
Yeah. If this is an obstacle course for consciousness, this simulation, it's tough. It's a tough game. If we can choose love over fear, then we win. Then we level up. But it's a tough game. And so
the Beach Boys were right. It's all about good vibrations.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you.
And thanks for running with me, Tom.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Tom.
You too. Yeah. All right.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah, you too. I think I can just turn it off.